welcome to Narrative and Beyond with Michael Adekombi. I'm blessed today to have a very good friend of mine. I met him some 20, that should be 23 years ago now. We served together back then. He's very sound. I remember then that before I bring him up, I remember then that anytime you are looking for big words, big English words, even if it is Latin word that you don't understand, just ask him. You don't need to consult the dictionary. He will tell you the meaning and break it down. He will even tell you the source of the word, the root word of of the word. Is that sound? And he's been a legal practitioner for many years, playing in the commercial law or something like that. Because I recall he used to be in one of the banks back then, and he's been practicing since then. He's been practicing law since then, and we are blessed to have him today. And he's a man that I truly respect. He stands for principles, non-compromising and all of that. He's very sound. He's diligent. You can't be around him and not read books, because you will feel like you don't know anything when you come around him. He's very vast. Okay. All right. I have with me today Barrister Tonye Sipoto. You're welcome to Narrative and Beyond.
Hello to all the viewers of this podcast. Wherever you are, God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. Keep following him. You will not miss anything that is good.
All right. So maybe we should just take it gradually. We were having some conversation before we started the podcast itself, before we came live. But we're going to get back there. Because the man of many lives is in the corporate world, in the marketplace, is practicing law, and he is okay. Don't let me say some of those things. Let me leave them for him to say. And he's been in politics as well, because of his passion for our nation, Nigeria. He's been in politics and trying to, effect changes as much as possible. But I'm going to leave all of that. Let me take you back to where everything started from. Where did you grow up, and how was growing up for you?
Well, growing up for me was an interesting story, if not stories. Some people will not believe it. I was born in what is known as the North today. And why is that the case? Because my parents were ministers of the gospel. And they got posted from one place, like the military, to the other. So my early life was in the North. The very first memories I remember was actually in Kano City. Going back there when I was an adult, the place looked so small. But when I was there as a child, it looked so big. So I recall, one of the other memories I recall growing up was during the Matasini riots. Those that are a bit older than us can remember the Matasini riots in Kano. And it was during the Second Republic, and they had sent in jets to quell. It was that serious. And I was so excited to see twin jets flying together and mesmerizing us in the air. But that was a child. My mother had to drag me in, but these are my memories. My parents, my father specifically, who was the clergy, was now posted back to the south, first somewhere in Ebonyi State, but then it was Anambra State. Then from there, we came back home to Port Harcourt. And so my schooling started up north, went down south, then southeast, south, southwest. Did my primary school, finished up in Port Harcourt. Did secondary school in Calabar, came back to Port Harcourt for university studies. Then, whether you believe it or not, showed up in Lagos for the first time because of law school. I never liked the city, but somehow had to endure law school. Then, interestingly, was sent to the southeast where we met, where I learned, I ate ewedu and gbegiri for the first time. And amala
That's
for the
part of
first
you.
time.
That's one of Yoruba delicacies.
I'm telling you, I did not touch it in Lagos. I didn't even go close to it. But seeing it prepared in family house there in Umuahia was encouraging enough for me to give it a try. Remember all the rules about not speaking Yoruba, but I learned more Yoruba in family house than I did somewhere else. Then I went back to Port Harcourt. And I think that's more or less my early life. Basically, I'm a Port Harcourt boy, but I have these many parts, around the country that just help me appreciate Nigeria as a whole.
And have a
I grew
balanced
up
view.
yes, a balanced view. And my father also helped because he also had similar experiences growing up in this part of the country, then going to work in Lagos. The same thing with in fact, the first Yoruba words I ever learned were from my parents. Words like mumbo, um,
Mumbo means I'm coming.
I'm coming, wajel. They just converse in Yoruba when they wanted to cut us off. But as a child,
You will pick
that's
it.
easier. That's the fastest time to learn languages when you're young. So my first, aside from any of my father's bloodline in that direction, I learned my first Yoruba words from my parents. So they also help they're traveling around the country, taking us around the country, help give us, a balanced view of the country so that we don't have a completely biased view. So we could qualify like any military child, any federal civil servant child, any other person who had anything to do with federal government. We went around and that just helped me appreciate and have a balanced view.
Awesome.
Growing up under my parents was interesting, disciplined, gave you that religious background that you needed, grounding principles, and that has helped us thus far. The Lord also added to it, So
Awesome.
that will be in a nutshell, what it looked like growing up.
Okay, so you've been in Lake. What actually shaped your ambition or your vision to become a legal practitioner? How did you get in there? Is it that it's always been a passion as a child, or what?
Interestingly, for those who know me, I have shared this with them. It wasn't my first choice. It never was my first choice because of my father's profession, as it were. It's one of those so-called three noble professions: the clergy, the medical profession, and the legal profession. So I didn't quite have that inclination there. I just knew that I could hold a good argument and a debate. And things that came naturally to me were things like history. I found it absurd to go to school and study history. Just came naturally as far as I was concerned. I was arguing with people far older than me at 8 because I had slipped into my father's library maybe around 7, 8, and just was feasting on books on the Second World War, the Nigerian Civil War. I mean, he had a vast library. I was just reading those books out of curiosity at my spare time. And so when I heard people outside say things that were not factual, I hold them to account. So, but the profession that came first to my mind, my parents would confirm this, was the military. That was the first profession I wanted to go to.
And why was that?
As young as on my own, my mom would say I think we lived somewhere up north, close to some military formation somewhere.
Mm.
And somehow I had internalized the drumming sequence. So I could reproduce the drumming sequence myself
Mm.
verbally and then match accordingly as a toddler. So I was doing this one time at the railway, and the soldiers observed me and said, "Ah, Madam," told my mother, "Madam, when he grows up, put him in the army." And I always liked their ceremonial drumming, sequence, discipline, regiment. My father
Mm.
put me in the boys' brigade, so
Oh,
that
I
helped
see.
shape a bit of that. But he insisted that I couldn't join the army except I joined as a professional. Now,
Mm.
that meant medicine, so I switched to medicine with the hope that once I qualified, I'll switch back to
Military.
being, yes, to the military. But somewhere after good grades in my junior secondary, I suddenly discovered that I just didn't like the hospital environment, just didn't like it. The
Mm.
smell, I just didn't like the smell, especially. So I would say more out of ignorance because I would have continued with that medicine and then go to an aspect that does not have to do with all that stuff. Maybe biotechnology, something to that effect. So I was distraught. So I began to sway towards the social sciences and settled in for international relations since I just loved languages aside from history.
Mm.
Um, shared that fact with my father. In fact, in my school, nobody talked about that course at all. I was the first person to introduce it, and it was at Obafemi Awolowo University, and I was ready to go, Ileife. So he contacted one of his friends who was an ambassador and said, I mean, this is your field. This is what my son wants to do. What do you think about it? And that God used that man to tell my father that, yes, it's good, but let him do a broad field like law. Then if he still feels like coming back, he
Mm.
can. And that's how reluctantly switched to law. And
Mm.
and I found myself in this noble profession as we strive to maintain it to be. So
Mm.
that's my journey to law. Despite all the discouragements, I faced a lot of discouragements. Um, naysayers like, "Are you sure you can talk? Are you sure you can talk?" Or you meet lecturers who are trying to, Nigerian lecturers who don't want you to share any knowledge other than what they're
They've got.
forcing down your throat
Mm.
in class.
Mm. Mm.
So the Lord helped us above all those oppositions and brought us
And
this far.
limitations as well. Awesome. So,
Yeah.
were there times in your secondary school? Let me just take you back to secondary school. You said you grew up different part of Nigeria, for instance, from the north, when the at some points in the west, then in the east and all of that before going back to south. That's Port Harcourt. I'm saying that because we have a global audience, that are people watching us from different parts of the
Yeah.
world. Um, so that's why I'm using the categorization of regions to say it. So
Yeah.
were you exposed to bullying as a result of the fact that you were not exactly from those parts of the country? And if can you recall any of such? And if there were, how did you overcome it?
Okay. One of the things that eventually solidified my decision to study law was that I eventually gradually found that I had the tendency to be averse to oppression generally. The scripture says that oppression makes the wise mad. So in secondary school, I eventually began to observe that trait and the trait to stand up in defense of those who are disadvantaged or weak.
Hmm. Or vulnerable. Yeah.
Bullying was in secondary school. Yeah, bullying was in secondary school. Basically, not just because I wasn't from that part of the country. We had a fairly spread out, intake of
Students.
people, students and pupils and learners. I went to the famous Hope Waddell Training Institute, Calabar, and we have famous alumni from the likes of Nnamdi Azikiwe to K.O. Mbadiwe to Louis Odumegu Ojukwu, Emeka Ojukwu's first millionaire, recorded millionaire in Nigeria or billionaire in Nigeria. We had Alvan, we had a lot of these people who had come from other parts of the country. So the institution was primed to receive people from the north, from the west. So that wasn't the reason. The reason was just they are bigger than you, they're a higher class, and they feel that they can trample on you. That was just the reason. And usually I stood up to them, and that did not attract me any savory treatments. We had to, in boarding house especially, take floggings, take beatings, until we now also came of age to those so-called classes. And as God didn't quite allow us go completely in that direction. Because some things happened in school which made the school authorities clamp down on such
bullying and all of that.
Yes, bullying, especially in the boarding house. Yes, so my reaction was to stand up to bullies. My principle is that the only language a bully responds or understands is when you stand up to him. He is actually a small man.
In a big body.
He's actually a small man. He just needs, it's just like inverted inferiority complex. He needs to bully you to feel good. So if you don't stand up to a bully, even if you don't fight him, he will continue to prey on you.
So
that was the experience I got from boarding house.
Awesome, thank you. Now that you have talked about this, because of my own profession as HR professional, I've seen and I've handled different cases of bullying in the workplace as well. What do you think that organizations should do to mitigate bullying in the workplace or workplace bullying, which can come from someone's line manager or from someone who is highly placed in the organization, and can come from peers as well, because bullying can come in different forms and formats. What do you think organizations should be doing to, because I know that you have corporate clients that you deal with all manners of issues as far as the legal side of the corporate world is concerned. What do you think the organizations should do to mitigate such?
Well, having been in the corporate setting too, I think the principle that everything rises and falls with leadership is up here. Because some organizations on paper have a grievance proceeding or procedure mechanism, which is just on paper. It is hardly followed. So the buck stops with the leadership. If the leader is a bully, the likelihood is that it is going to rub off on all other members of the team. But if the leader will not countenance bullying, or leadership in that culture or in that organization will not countenance the culture of bullying, the next thing is to ensure that the grievance procedure in that organization is set out as clearly as possible and is enforced regardless of who whose ox is God. Because for every bully, if you don't stand up to them or make an example of them, they will not back down. And the other bullies will also not back down. Then the culture will fester. The culture will fester. So there's need to ensure that bullying is not tolerated at any level. It is not tolerated. So, I mean, the CEO must always tell himself, I will not have this culture in this organization. I must project that nuance to every other person, which means he must also be self-conscious that he's not bullying anybody. If not, the culture will fester and people will probably take matters into their hands, either by fighting back in a very nasty manner or by quietly leaving the organization. And that way, the organization might just lose talents that would have moved the organization to the next level. So that's my advice.
All right, thank you. I'm going to be taking you a bit more into your or picking your brain on some legal, things, so that we can learn from it. Okay. Let me start from here first. If we have a student, if I am a student and I want to study law, what would be your advice to me as a student, as a young person who is probably just leaving college and I want to study law, I want to be a legal practitioner? What would be your advice to me?
This is the way I usually put it. I will take your intelligence and hard work as a guarantee. What do I mean? I take it that you're intelligent and hardworking first. I will take the risk of assuming that you are. So I will now double down on developing the virtue of patience. Because this generation is a generation that wants everything now.
Fast.
Fast. Microwave and delivered now. It doesn't work that way in this profession. In this profession, you have to develop the virtue called patience. You need patience as you study, as you deal with your lecturers, as you watch your friends who came in the same year with you leave at fourth year, and you still have fifth year to do, and you still have 1 year in law school to do. And some people do 2 years and 3 years in law school. It takes a lot of patience and determination to go through that sometimes harrowing experience in law faculty and in law school. Then you are called to bar, only to discover that your learning just began. They only just equipped you with the basics in faculty and in law school. So your learning just began. You've given tools, you are now asked to go and hew the rocks and carve out something from a rock that everybody will appreciate. So that is, in summary, what I would tell that student. I want to believe that the student, because the cutoff marks are never the same, but even if your cutoff mark was 180 and you got in there because you knew the VC, and this is Nigeria, you still have to work hard. You still have to work diligently if you want to come out at the top of the pack. I mean, when we got into school, we were about 150 of us in the class. The university knew that was well above the quota given to them by the Council of Legal Education. But like one of my lecturers will say, we have been here long enough to qualify as prophets. to determine and to tell from now who will graduate and who will not graduate on time. Can you imagine they that arrogated the office of prophets to themselves? So it's not to put down anybody, but imagine a class of 150 and just roughly about 20% went to law school, that class.
Wow.
After 5 years.
Wow. That's like 30 people out of 150.
It wasn't even up to 30. I'm just being generous.
Wow.
It wasn't up to 30 who from that class went to law school on time. Not to put anybody down. It didn't mean the end of the life of the other people. I'm just saying patience. The other people did not give up. They had to be patient to go to law school the next year. Some went to law school 2 years later. Some went 3 years later. They're still your classmates in university, but I mean, in a profession that respects seniority, that's what happened. So you need a lot of that patience to stay focused. I even know people who got to 4th year were told to withdraw.
Wow.
And of their determination, they went back, started from year 1, and today are lawyers.
Wow.
So it takes a lot of patience.
And endurance.
And endurance.
That's like endurance trick.
Exactly. So just like that's why some lawyers and maybe doctors and to some extent soldiers most times seem to have some chip on their shoulders
because of what they went through to get there.
Yeah, they pay the price, and they paid an iron price to get there.
Okay, let me ask another question, and I'll be taking you through, a few other questions, just to glean some wisdom from your legal expertise.
Okay.
Let me start by asking you first, what's your specialization in law? Because I know law is very broad. Just for the sake of our viewers, what's your specialization in law? Before I start asking some of my questions.
My slant is towards the commercial and corporate aspect of law.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So,
very regularly, I do corporate litigation and also advisory work on the commercial line of our profession. Yes.
So, what's the difference between the commercial and the corporate law?
Commercial is basically what some people usually call business law. So everything that has to do with it, or in some cases, transactional law.
Transactional law. Okay.
Yes, but transactional law is highfalutin that is used in more professional circles. What people know generally is business law. So wherever there's going to be transaction, business, that's commercial. Corporate is zeroing it into where it has to do with structured business organizations, yes, and companies and entities. So that's what makes it. That's the distinction that you have. If you go to the other broad aspect, the other spectrum. You have our friends in the Ministry of Justice who just do criminal law virtually every day.
Awesome.
Those we know as state counsel or prosecutors. They just do criminal law virtually every day.
But that's what they enjoy, I guess.
Yeah, that's what they enjoy doing. Yes.
So when you want to notarize sensitive document, for instance, to ensure compliance, what steps or what processes do you follow to do that? This is for knowledge, yeah.
Okay, as a legal practitioner.
Yes, as a legal practitioner, yes.
Okay, knowing that you have your duties and responsibilities to the Supreme Court of Nigeria as a notary public, you try to authenticate, because your duty is basically to authenticate that document. Most times a notary will notarize a copy of a document. So your due diligence is to ensure that you have access to the original copy of what you are notarizing. Because essentially what you're saying to somebody before whom that document will be presented is that as an officer of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, I have seen the originals of this document. And I have authenticated that this copy is a valid representation of that original. So you can deal with this copy as though you were dealing with the original. So your due diligence, your primary due diligence, is to ensure that you assess and view and scrutinize the original copy. If you want to notarize a document and the person is refusing to give you access to the original, then the person is not ready to notarize, at least not with me. You have to take it to some other public.
Okay. So, okay, taking up more, I'm sure you've dealt with property issues and all of that. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So, if someone wants to buy a property, for instance, what would be your counsel, as a legal practitioner, on what should they be looking for or looking at before they invest in property?
Okay. Usually, land is viewed under the Land Use Act. There's a distinction, slight distinction between lands in urban areas and lands in the rural areas. The irony in the country is that the law says all the lands are vested
In the government.
in the governor of the state in trust for his people. But when you go down to the rural areas, nobody cares about the Land Use Act. It is their inheritance from their forefathers. It does not belong to government, neither does it belong to the governor. We don't know those people. If they want to acquire land, let them come and talk to us.
To the
That is
families.
the reality. Yes, let's come and talk to the community or come and talk to the family. So, in buying land in the urban area, first step is that you should get your lawyer to write to the prospective seller to avail you a survey plan if they will be willing to, so that your lawyer can apply to the land registry and conduct a search on that property. Even when they do not avail you a survey plan, you can ask for permission to survey the land, or at least get a description of the land and ask your lawyer to apply to the land registry for a search to ascertain who is the registered owner of the property, to ascertain whether the person has used the property as a form of mortgage or security to a bank. A company, whether there's a debenture on it, whether it's registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission. These are the initial due diligence you need to do. If the person claims that they own the land, what is the title document? Is it a deed of conveyance, which only represents the transaction? Is the deed of conveyance registered? Is it a deed of assignment? Or is it an outright CFO? You need to know what the title documents are and alert or brief your lawyer to investigate them in the land registry. When that comes clear and there's a green light that the seller is the actual owner of the property and there are no issues on the property, in Rivers State, you could also run some check at the registry to find out if that property is a subject of litigation. because it might be a subject of litigation, but there's no indication of that at the land registry. So you need to run your check at the high courts. And when you have it clear there, then you can proceed to deal with the seller. And of course, carry your lawyer along and ensure that it is put in an agreement in written form, parties signed, and the document registered.
Okay.
However,
All right.
if you have to deal with land in rural areas, it seems to be a different ballgame. It involves a lot more of being on ground to ascertain that the persons claiming to own that land traditionally are those who are actually the owners of the land and how they came about it. Did they buy it? Did they inherit it? Is the person trying to sell to you a principal member of the family? Or, I mean, is it the last born who is trying to play on the ignorance of his elder brothers? Because you go buy from the last born and the first son said you bought nothing but some litigation. So with rural land, regarding rural land, you have to do a lot more on the ground, on the spot investigation of who the families or the communities who claim to own that land really are.
Okay. So if, for instance, if someone is buying a land from a family, in the city now, and the original owner of the property is demise, all right, and there is no will, what should the buyer do to be sure that there is no will? This person has died. I don't know how you guys call it, intestate, or is that the right word? Okay, all right. Okay, all right. So, and you want to buy this property from this person, I mean from the family, and there is no will to show that, okay, this dead person has said this property belongs to the children or the husband, or or the spouse, as it were. What should the buyer do to be sure that they are safe?
Exactly. This is the exact reason why I said you needed to also run some check at the court registry in case that property is under
As encumbrance.
Yes. But where a person dies intestate, anybody that wants to deal with that property where by intestate we mean he died without making a will. Then anybody that wants to deal with the property needs to show you a letter of administration that empowers him to deal with the property of the deceased. So, and that letter of administration, it's a process. It's not something you apply for from experience one day and you get it in 2 days or even 3 days or even 4 days. Because there's a period where your application will be published, publicly published, asking for objections. So it's a process that sometimes takes up to 3 years before a person can get, the letters of administration. So you request for a letter of administration and also run your check at the court registry to ensure that there was no objection to that letter of administration, or even ask to find from the court registry whether the letter of administration is authentic, because there are forgeries. So those are the due diligence you need to do.
That need to be done.
If you found out that the property was owned by somebody who is deceased.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to be asking you a question, even though we're going to take a short break, and that's about your role in the NBA, that's Nigeria Bar Association, Port Harcourt branch. You became an ESCO in sometimes a few years ago, 2018 thereabouts. I'm going to be asking you a question around that place. How did it feel stepping into such role that you have to be the secretary, that association within your city, and what are the things that you took away from that experience. We'll be right back for the continuation of this conversation with Barrister Tonyesi Poto, and we would continue from there when we are back. Thank you.